Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Copilot Compass, where each week we'll take a deep dive into Microsoft 365 Copilot. As always, I have the pleasure of being joined by my esteemed colleague, fellow Copilot enthusiast, and our resident smart guy, Logan.
Thanks, Grant. Happy to be here.
Awesome. And Logan, why don't you tell the audience what they can expect from our episode this week?
Yeah, so this week we'll start off with the question of the week, as always, and then we're going to dive into our topic, which is change management and best practices for Copilot adoption. And so we're going to show you a bunch of different models and Microsoft resources that can help elevate Copilot in your organization. And make sure you stay tuned until the end, and we'll give you a sneak peek of what we got going on next week.
Yeah, really excited about this week's topic, change management. Definitely a big practice for us here at Red Sky and iLink, especially as it comes to digital transformation and modernization efforts. And, our methods are going to merge sort of ProSci methodology. If you're not familiar with ProSci, it's sort of the gold standard when it comes to organizational change management and human change. But we merge those best practices with Microsoft's adoption roadmap that they've put out for Copilot. And as you mentioned, they have a lot of really great resources with Copilot to help organizations get started on that road. And their methodologies do also closely mirror ProSci as well. So I think you're going to see, a lot of crossover there. But yeah, I'm very excited to talk about that. And this is, one of the first technologies that truly requires real change management. It's not, you know, it's a complete shift in the way people work. I mean, to really take advantage and use it to its full capacity, individuals are truly having to make a real change. It's no longer, if we look at Power BI when that rolled out, it's not like, hey, I'm an analyst, I'm using Excel a whole bunch, and now I'm going to do sort of similar things, but better in Power BI. In this particular case, you're talking about an HR operations person that maybe has had to build presentations in the past that now that entire process has completely changed in the way that they would go about that. So again, I think a really important topic. It'll differ a bit from our other sessions where we focused on, a particular Office app or something like that. But again, I think a really important topic because Copilot is going to change the way that we work.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and we've both seen it in our day-to-days as well using Copilot. It's there's just so many little mundane tasks that take up a lot of your time and kind of eat away at your day that Copilot can help you out with. So yeah, it's a really big change in the entire working environment.
Yeah, and that's really the key value that Copilot brings. It's more time on the things that matter at the organization and less time pushing buttons. Well, I think with that, we're ready to set sail.
Yeah, I think so. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment.
Good point, Logan. Okay, let's dive in.
As always, we're going to start with our question of the week. And remember to leave a comment or click the link in the description to submit a question of your own. So yeah, this week it's our question is, what does Copilot save you the most time with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, I'm going to cheat and answer twice. So first, at the start of my day, I'm logging into Outlook. I'm trying to catch up on emails before my first set of morning meetings start. And, I'm typically getting somewhere around like 150 emails in a day. And previous to Copilot coming out, what I was doing is kind of starting with the oldest, what came in overnight, maybe from our offshore teams and just working my way up vertically, so to speak, through my inbox. And what I was finding is, I'm very rarely able to clear that whole inbox before my first set of morning meetings start. And so sometimes I'm responding to emails that are not urgent at all, but leaving some really urgent ones that have come in, maybe in the early morning hours until later in the day when I get a chance to get to them. So what I've done is used Copilot to more intelligently sort of scroll through my mailbox and focus on getting to the items and emails that truly require my attention first. And then also, being able to summarize long threads. And, we'll often have situations where there's members of our offshore team going back and forth on a thread. And so now I no longer have to, take the time to scroll through and take several minutes catching up on the thread. I can just use that summary function. The other one that has been really valuable for me is meeting notes in Teams. A lot of times, especially I'm going to back-to-back calls, I'm trying to write down notes, and I've certainly used OneNote, and that's been great for me to take my own notes. But Having the ability to have Copilot be, my second set of eyes and ears in those meetings to capture the action items and provide those summaries has also been really helpful for me. What about you, Logan? I mean, what have you found to be your easiest and best use cases with Copilot?
Yeah. So in my day to day, I build a lot of presentations in PowerPoint. So I use Copilot in PowerPoint a whole bunch. It's kind of what we were covering in our last episode. But just having somewhere to start with is so crucial, and being able to edit down from there makes the whole process a whole lot easier. The end product might not look anything like what Copilot generated for you, but having that good starting place and being able to work from there saves me so much time in building all these decks that I do for work.
Yeah, I think that the starting place is the key word there. It's not something that we're gonna ever use and just produce a deck and that's that and we're done. But it is a great way to get started. As we've said before, the hardest thing is getting started, and Copilot is fantastic for that. But no, I think these are good points. Let's go ahead and start getting into our topic of the week: change management.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's dive right into talking about organizational change management and how it applies to Copilot. As we mentioned at the start of this week's episode, we talked about how Copilot really is one of the first technologies that's going to require true change management. Users are going to change the way that they operate and the way that they go about their day to day, significant changes. So, to do this, we'll use Prosci's methodology. And Prosci at its core has a model that's called ADKAR. And what ADKAR stands for is awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And this is not necessarily the sequential steps that a user goes through in change, but more how adoption happens at a user level. So, when we talk about organizational change, it happens one user at a time. And what we mean by that is, a collective user adoption or a collective user change leads to that broader organizational change. So, in this particular case, as we talk through this acronym here, we'll talk about it as an individual level. You're changing one person or one group at the organization as they roll out Copilot and start to adopt and deploy. Now, again, this is not sequentially how people always go through the process. Let me give you an example here. Knowledge. You might have somebody that has already used Copilot maybe in their personal life, or maybe they're new to the organization. Their previous employer had Microsoft 365 Copilot. It could be a number of reasons, but maybe they're just very tech savvy. So they have the knowledge to use it. But if maybe they don't like it, they weren't supportive of it coming in, they wanted a different technology instead. Don't know why they would do that, but in any case, maybe they don't have the desire to use the tool. So even though they've already achieved knowledge, that doesn't necessarily they've already achieved the desire. So let's talk about how each of these occur and specifically how they relate to Copilot adoption. So awareness and desire are the first two here, and we like to club these together. It's not always helpful to make people aware of something unless you're driving the why behind it or building the desire for that change. But as we work through the acronym here, so awareness first, there's a few things that we want to do to drive awareness. And again, often aligned with the desire activities. But we want to communicate the vision, not just what is happening, but why is this happening? What is the vision? And especially when folks hear Gen AI, some people's first instinct is, oh man, I'm getting replaced by a machine. And that's not the case with Copilot. Again, we've mentioned this in previous episodes. We're not seeing Gen AI replacing roles, but instead empowering people to do more. So we want to make sure that that's clearly communicated in our initial awareness campaigns. In the awareness tool, we also have to engage and identify and involve key stakeholders. The people. This doesn't always mean senior leadership. It certainly does mean you do have to include those folks, but you also want to include people that have a lot of influence in the organization. Those of you listening at home, they're especially part of medium to large size companies. You're already probably starting to have names come to mind of folks that have a lot of influence over other groups, other members of the team, maybe more tenured folks, maybe just more social folks, but people that have influence that can be your change champions. We also want to start running internal marketing campaigns. So email campaigns that are going out. meeting with managers and mid-level leadership to kind of communicate this vision, standing up things on, company SharePoint sites, or, if you have like a group homepage, something like that, Teams accounts, getting those, communications started. And then also, town halls and interactive sessions are great. If you already have something scheduled, like maybe a monthly or quarterly cadence with the entire group or entire company, having, the Copilot rollout being discussed there shows that it's important. Involving it at that type of scale is reiterating to your employees that this is an important effort for the company. Now, the other big piece here that we have to drive is the desire. Folks, not only do they have to know how to use it, but they have to want to use it. Um, so there's a few things that we want to do here is we want to anticipate and address concerns. And this is different company to company. And there are, certainly companies like Red Sky and iLink that can help you identify some of these concerns. But we want to, pull our employees, figure out, water cooler types of conversations, figure out what are their concerns, and then come up with ways that we can address those concerns. We also want to share, especially if you're talking about, you've already done it at like a small level, like you've had a pilot or a proof of concept with one group, and now you're preparing for a broader rollout. Share success stories. Talk about how, it's benefited both the company and the folks that had access to the licenses. Share it from both sides of that story. Incentivizing early adoption is another thing that we've seen be successful, and this can come in a lot of ways. It could be simply, maybe a person gets the opportunity to share in like a brown bag session or something like that, or work with other groups to share what they've had success with, and that, that publicity or that, visibility at the organization is something they want. Could also be just, quick little giveaways, maybe a team lunch if so, every user is active on it on a day-to-day basis, something like that. But, even we're not talking significant investments here, but, small things that we can do to incentivize that adoption. Um, Personalized messaging and communications, and this really comes down to middle managers communicating this with employees, making sure that it's wrapped for what that person does and that person's goals with Copilot. Another big one, and I think an often missed step here, is involving users in the planning and the implementation process. A lot of times what we see the companies that go out on this journey on their own is they try to think for the employees on their behalf. And you maybe have somebody in your, let's say, an IT department that's trying to assume what are the challenges of my financial services team. And the better person to ask that question to is somebody on the financial services team. So, getting those folks involved, and it also gives them a stake in the game. They feel involved, and they feel, even if you're not necessarily taking up all of their use cases right away, they at least feel good that they've had a chance to participate in that activity. And the last one here we put, intentionally here at the end because it's the most important, is start to identify those change champions. And this is a big term. It's a short form podcast. We won't get into a ton of detail on this, but your change champions are the folks that really drive and influence others. And we want to identify those folks here early in this desire phase. Now, the knowledge phase is one that we're all going to be familiar with. This comes down to training. And, for the scope of our podcast, we're not going to talk about technical readiness, but more on the user readiness. How do we make sure that people know how to use the tools and make sure that they can take advantage of Copilot's, full scope of options there? Lot of options here. Workshops are great, getting folks either virtually or in person, getting them all in one place and going through. We love doing these at like a group level rather than trying to club HR, operations, IT, customer service, all those folks, and trying to make very general stuff, but more doing it customized for, okay, we're going to bring in the customer service team today. We're going to, understand their pain points, start to, discuss solutions there and show some demos with Copilot that can solve it in their own environments. So workshops are great. But you want to supplement that as well. People get sick and can't attend the workshop, or maybe, you've got 4 members of the team are there on site and can attend, and you got a 5th person that's virtual, and, that's not the same experience for them. So you can't just rely only on workshops. So including other things and meeting them where they are. E-learning and LMS courses are great. It allows people to, get to it as they have time, and prioritize that accordingly. And then they also, it's easy to access and go back to it if they, hey, I remembered that there was this, challenge I'm having was covered in that course. Let me go back to it. rather than having to, maybe dig through notes from a workshop. User guides and job aids are fantastic with really any digital transformation or modernization project, but having something that's readily available for them, in the form of documentation that they can refer to show them, step-by-step guides on how they achieve something, or even just a simple guide of, hey, what does that button do type of thing. But those visual things are great. Support channels, you also got to make sure that this is a very conscious effort. Where does somebody go when they get stuck? And you have options here. This could be its own separate podcast episode, but you maybe are standing up change champions and putting them in positions of, hey, they have a Teams group, or, that's the go-to person that somebody can just ask a quick question to on Teams, but enable those folks here in those support channels. And then again, empowering those change champions, give them the opportunity to share their successes with the team. Now, once we reach knowledge, this goes into ability. So they have to know how to do it, and then they have to actually be able to demonstrate that ability to do it. And this ability phase is where usage happens. This is where we're going to start to see those adoption metrics in our Copilot dashboard start to go up. And there's a lot of things we want to do to try to get to that ability phase, and that's going to be those brown bag sessions we covered briefly. Establishing feedback mechanisms, as people start to use it and, roll up their sleeves, they're going to find maybe that okay, this is great, but I want to do more. I think that Copilot can do more for me here. So give them a mechanism to, either reach out for questions or provide suggestions as you maybe are starting to get, Copilot Studio and custom chats rolled in. Mentorship programs and peer learning groups. So giving, folks the resources to reach out to one another, and share with their peers. On-demand training, supplementing those workshops. You don't want to just have that one workshop and then expect that 6 months later they remember everything. So just try to have, and it doesn't need to be as long as maybe that first workshop was, but something that's there to give them kind of that continuous learning and teach them what's next. How can they do more? And regular check-ins, making sure that you're asking folks, like, you might see really good adoption at first, and then it starts to sort of trickle down or people move away from it, and try to get ahead of the game by just checking in with folks, with middle managers or with individual employees, and find out, how they're liking it, what they're liking, what they're not liking. Now, reinforcement is where you find change that sticks. So this is not a good initial rollout, but instead a long-term and true organizational change management where now we're operating differently and we're using Copilot's now a part of our lives. Really important. I think a lot of companies can do a good job getting through A, D, and K, and then kind of approaching A. But, 6 months down the road, they start to see that adoption and the usage metrics trick down. And so this is where you have to focus on those reinforcement activities to make sure that your change sticks. You want to make sure that you're monitoring usage and tracking performance. And the good news on this is that Microsoft has a lot of really great dashboards and metrics that you can look at that don't require a lot of time from your IT department. It's very simple to use. And so this, Microsoft thankfully makes this easy for us. It's also important to make sure that you're celebrating your achievements. If you're doing well here, highlight that, include it in your company's newsletter. Put a slide in your upcoming town hall, maybe even highlight groups that are doing well to the rest of the organization, but try to celebrate successes there. And create a culture of continuous improvement. Now, what do we mean by this? It means, not just taking what we've taught you in the workshop in the knowledge phase, but also doing more, experimenting, trying new ways, and then, again, celebrating it when it's successful. Another really big point is if you're not doing well in the reinforcement stage, be willing to go back and find out, what's happening, and be willing to start over with new workshops or new, expanding your LMS courses or revising those. Be willing to learn from challenges you've experienced and go backwards if you have to. Ongoing training, we see on a month-to-month basis, Copilot's getting, new things coming out. So we want to make sure that our users are aware of those things. It's Copilot's not an instance in time; it's constantly evolving, as is really everything in Gen AI. So being sure that we're keeping our employees up to date on the latest and greatest there. And lastly, the most important thing with change management is active and visible support from the leadership. So putting, making sure that our leaders are the ones that are communicating the big whys at the organizational level. Why is this here? Now, this was a very kind of quick overview of ADKAR from Prosci. And again, a lot of Microsoft's material is going to follow a lot of Prosci's concepts here. And so with that, I think this is a good time for us to transition in and talk a little bit about the resources that Microsoft has available for you as you start your Copilot journey. Okay, so as we mentioned, the good news is with your Copilot journey, Microsoft has a lot of really great resources, not only on the user adoption side, but also on the technical readiness side of the house as well. So we're going to focus on the user adoption, and where I'm at currently here is just adoption.microsoft.com/Copilot. And again, we're not going to go through all the resources that are available for you here. It'd be its own very lengthy podcast, quite frankly, extensive amount of material from them. But what we will take a look at here is down here under this interactive scenario library, there's this Get Inspired button. We'll click here. And what this is here is this is your scenario library. So this is a really great tool early in your journey to figure out, what is Microsoft suggesting for you as those early use cases. And we're going to see it split up two key ways. So that's going to suggest some different things for you here in the middle, but where I want to point your direction here is these two areas, functional areas and industry scenarios. So it's going to have those key departments that, most organizations are going to have, customer service, finance, HR, those types of things. And we can certainly click on one of these and figure out department-wise where we want to start. And it's also going to have, industry scenarios. So you can kind of start with the material here for your specific industry. We're not going to go through all of them, but why don't we just, so we can have the folks at home get a little preview of what they can find here in the scenario library. Logan, why don't you pick one for us to take a look at?
Yeah, sure. Let's do marketing.
Awesome. Yeah, good choice. Red Sky and iLink has a really strong marketing department, marketing services. So good way to start for us. So what you'll see in here is it's going to have this table here with common KPIs that your marketing department may have. And you can click on these to get some links that will show you, use cases for those KPIs. But where I want to focus our attention today is this marketing scenario kit. You can certainly see that you've got a couple of demos and overview, videos that you can do here. But this kit is also downloadable. So you can download this PowerPoint deck, take it with you as you're, heading onto a flight or something like that. Good way to sort of consume this material offline. And what you'll have here is, this marketing one in particular, about a 25 slide PowerPoint deck. The first few things it's going to have in here is more generic, the Copilot journey, some first 10, the easiest 10 things to try. We're going to cover a lot of these either already in our first couple of episodes of the Copilot Compass or in future sessions. So we'll kind of skip ahead through some of this stuff. And I want to turn our attention to a couple of key sections here that we find valuable in these materials. So the first one here, as I get a little bit further along, is going to be these sort of journey slides that they have here. And they're going to cover not just your out-of-the-box Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is, the scope of this particular podcast, but it's going to also cover the free or freemium versions of Microsoft Copilot. It's also going to cover Studio and some of those other SKUs. So what you can do here is you can just see it, with these scenario guides, what is required from a licensing perspective in order to achieve each scenario. And so, in this particular case, this one's telling me I've got to have Microsoft 365 Copilot and Copilot Studio. But I can see for each scenario what is required. So in this one, I can see the Copilot agents are required and a connection to the document repository. But in this particular one, I just need Copilot chat. This one, I just need Copilot in Word. So that's kind of what it's showing you here. But it's going to show you sort of a step-by-step guide based on a given, sort of scenario. In this case, it is creating a marketing bill of materials. It's going to have a video for you here if you're a more visual learner. But again, if you're looking at this offline, certainly can just sort of read through the deck, and it's going to show you what is the use case here and what is the benefit to you as a user and an organization. So I can see here, how do I brainstorm with Copilot? How can I, come up with snazzy taglines? How can I create my messaging frameworks? How can I meet with my product groups and sort of collaborate on ideas? How can I build those assets in PowerPoint and in Word? And then tracking inventory using Loop. So it's going to cover some really good stuff for us here. Going to have a lot of different scenarios for you. They're going to try to keep it, the things are going to be relevant for most of us. Now, in this particular one here, I can see this is just Microsoft 365 Copilot, my out of the box version of it. Again, really good stuff for us here to understand what is going to be required for each of these from a licensing perspective. As I'm clicking through here, you can see they're going to cover a lot of stuff. And again, they have different versions of this for, your finance teams, HR, all of those different scenarios. So if you're kind of planning to maybe pilot Copilot with one particular group, uh, great way to get started here. This is another version of the slides that I really like, where it's going to kind of walk you through a day in the life. Now, this one is Copilot Studio, but what it's going to show you is kind of this person, in this case, Mio. Mio is our marketing manager here at Contoso, and it's going to show you at 8 a.m. He's going to use Copilot and Word to prepare a brief to give to agencies bidding on a new advertising campaign. Now at 8:30, half hour later, he's going to use Copilot in the whiteboard to categorize ideas and so on and so forth. It kind of takes you through that journey. It makes it a little bit more real, gives a little bit more context into the operations, by group or by department here. So again, really great place for you to get started. Really strongly encourage you, if you're, early in your Copilot journey or still thinking about whether you want to head down this road, check out that scenario library, start getting some ideas. In today's Journey of the Copilot Compass, we talked about how change management considerations apply when it comes to your Copilot journey. Specifically, we talked about the ADKAR principle from Prosci and how that applies when you are looking to drive organizational and user adoption of Copilot. We also went through a little brief preview of the adoption materials that Microsoft provides in those resources, and specifically, we focused on that scenario library.
Yeah, hopefully these resources were helpful and gave you a little insight on the change management side of Copilot. So make sure you don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and let us know where you'd like to see us go next. Also, remember that we have the Q&A sessions at the beginning of each episode, so make sure you leave a comment or click the link in the description to send us a question. And remember that new episodes are going to be released every Tuesday, and stay tuned to get a sneak preview of what we're going to cover next.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week.